Hello, Paper and Glam reading family. Welcome to April's installment of Book Club. I am excited to dive into our first quarterly classic of 2017, and it was a tough one. I think that if you cracked it and you gave it your type awesome A for effort, you can definitely cross this one off your list because it was a tough one. There are some absolutely beautiful lines in it, and I cannot wait to go through some of those. Oh, let me turn this off. The washroom is giving me like whiplash here because it's behind. So anyway, if you gave this your best college try, then definitely I am so proud of you, and I hope that, you know, regardless of whether you're able to make it through the book or not, you'll still join us and hang out with us, and hopefully we can, you know, at the very minimum, say that we read a book of poetry this year. So our icebreaker for this month is, what new releases are you looking forward to for like this coming season, this spring season? So I thought this was a perfect suggestion from Jessica on the Paper and Glam Book Club, because I have a couple that I had really wanted to talk to you guys about. So the first one Jana recommended, our professor recommended this book that I didn't even know was coming out. So it's called Maud, and it's a fictionalization of the life of Ellen Montgomery, who wrote Anne of Green Gables, which we're reading in October. So I pre-ordered this. It just came like yesterday. So I'm so excited about reading Maud, and I definitely would consider this a great companion for our October read, Anne of Green Gables. And I mean, also just how beautiful is this cover? It's very paper and glam. I just want to like look at it. So there's that, and then a book that is a new release that hasn't quite been released yet is Always and Forever, Laura Jean, and that's coming out on May 2nd, so in just a few days here. And spoiler alert, that is our April read for Paper Glam Book Club 2018. It's going to be difficult for me, I know, to not read it, but if you guys were with us last year, you know we read To All the Boys I Loved Before, and a lot of us also read P.S. I Still Love You, which is the sequel, and this is the third installment of the Laura Jean series, and it's one of my all-time favorite young adult books. It's like, she's just such a great writer, and it makes me love young adult as a genre, even though it's not exactly in my wheelhouse. So let's see, does anyone else in the group, we're kind of going to go out of order since this is like such a difficult read. So does anyone else have new releases that they're super excited about to share?
I'm looking forward to Into the Water by Paula Hawkins.
I second. That's the one that I was going to say too, that I'm most excited for. And I just read, if you like the Queen of the Cheerleading series, I finally just finished the third one, right, Sarah, of those. So it's kind of a new release. It's a few months. I'm a few months behind, but I'm excited for the same one Hayden is too.
Did we lose Jana? Is she there? Uh-oh, I hope we didn't lose our professor, because we're going to need her for Walt Whitman. And Sarah, okay, there's Sarah's face, and we're just missing Tabitha.
So I just wanted to pipe in real quick. Not the most new release, but I've been reading the Red Queen series, and the third one came out recently, and I'm partway through the second one, so I'm super excited about that. So yeah, that's my exciting new release.
Sorry, I think it sounds like you're going through a wind tunnel. I think you're still having issues with your internet. All right. So the first question is, what was your experience of reading Leaves of Grass? So I think we'll all say that it was a serious challenge, and probably would have been good to listen to Walt Whitman read some of it himself aloud, which he's recorded some of that, and I wish I had gotten to that, or even like checked out an Audible version. But I tried to read it straight through, which was really super difficult. I definitely found myself skimming and not fully taking it all in. But I think we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. Anyone else have anything to share on their experience of reading Leaves of Grass?
Yeah, I struggled, and I had started trying before. What month are we in? April? I had started trying in February to get through it, and I just couldn't do it. It was one of those ones where I personally needed to sit down like with a paper copy. Mine was electronic from the library, as is most everything I read. And I just couldn't do it. And part of me was like, oh, you should do it. It's for book club. Like, you should just power through it. And then part of me was just like, well, reading for me is like one of the happiest parts of my day. And it wasn't that anymore. And if it was for school or something like that, I think I would have been able to keep going. I just couldn't do it. It was the same thing, just kind of skimming. Like, I was physically, my eyes were following the words, but I would just turn pages and not have any recollection of what happened to me. So I really struggled, and I hate that I struggled. F for me, not A for effort, F for me. But I tried, and I'm excited to hear what you guys who read it and made it and are better people than me thought about it.
I made it through Song of Myself. I didn't make it through all 150 pages of Leaves of Grass, but I really struggle with poetry. I've never read it before, but I did enjoy parts of Song of Myself. I really enjoyed his outlook on what he thought about life and racism and gender, and so it made me think. I just didn't understand it as well as I would have liked to have.
Yeah, I finished. I have the same copy that Lisa Marie has, and I read through the whole book. I split it up, like I read a little bit every night, which is how I like to read poetry anyway, because I want to deliberately slow down when I'm reading poetry, because it makes me think about what I'm reading, and most of the time I'm just trying to consume a story as fast as I can. But that makes me sound like I read poetry a lot, which I don't. So it was still really difficult for me. Even as an English major, like, I was like, oh, I can read all these commentaries. And I was just like, no, I would look up words if I didn't know what it meant, to try to kind of figure out the context of what he was saying if I didn't understand. But yeah, it was difficult. I think I was reading like 7 or 8 pages a night, and I was barely getting through them, like still understanding what I was reading by the end of it. But I mean, there are definitely, like, I would mark passages like, oh, I like this, either the wording of it or like what I got out of it. There were quite a few. As I made my way further and further through, there were less of those passages. So I think I was definitely like bit. But I mean, overall, it's not really my, like, I like really sparse poetry, I guess. So it's not really my style, especially when it gets to those parts where he's just like a long list of things. And I understand kind of, I think, what he's trying to do there, but it's not my favorite style of poetry. So it was still a struggle for me.
I've read it several times for different reasons. So, and I have the same book as Lisa Marie and Erica, the purple drop caps penguin edition. And you know, I made it through, and because I've read it before, I did do a lot of skimming, and I couldn't take notes for things I wanted to say for tonight, specifically in that edition, because I don't want to write in that really pretty expensive book. So I did have to like pull out my old notes. But I think because I wasn't taking notes, I kind of looked at it differently. And previously I had rated it as a 4-star read, just like, and I think when you're looking at something academically in a classroom, then you really get into it and you're like, yeah, 4 stars, that was amazing. But now that I'm older and I haven't read it for about probably like 7 or 8 years, I feel more like it's a 3-star read, but then like a couple lines would hit me and I'd be like, oh, but those are 4-star lines. But I feel like overall as a whole, it's more of a 3-star read for me now. And, you know, and I know why it's really hard, and it's poetry that doesn't seem like poetry, which is like, if you've read the preface, he kind of talks like about, you know, free verse poetry is like America's free verse poetry. So I don't know. I can see why it's not for everyone. And it's not exactly for me either. It's not my favorite type of poetry. And I really love poetry.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for bearing with this selection. It definitely was a lesson for me. I need to choose things that are a little bit more accessible for everyone. It was hard for me to access it too, and Jana, who teaches it and is a literature professor, so we're definitely all in good company. But with classics, sometimes I feel like even just to ingest them, like The Great Gatsby, right, which was arguably our most accessible classic that we read last in September. When I say our most accessible classic, I mean like our as a American literature as a genre, at least in my opinion. And even that book, I feel like to really get all of it, you would need to read it several times. And I feel like Walt Whitman is, I probably would need to read this 50 times. And I still, at the end of the day, I don't even know that you're supposed to come away with like a perfectly clear understanding of everything he wrote. And for me, I'm a huge nerd, so I like to like read commentaries like Erica was saying, and like try and figure out, like, I just want to understand it. I want to go deep into books like this, but it was really hard, even just reading commentaries. And I completely also agree with what Erica said, is that it got harder and harder as it went, which I feel like that's the opposite of most books we read, right? It gets easier and easier as you go. So all that to say, thanks for bearing with this selection. And now when this is referenced in, like pop culture, we'll all be like, oh, I at least have some frame of reference for that. All right, so let's jump into our questions. And these are going to be tough questions, so if you guys need to skip, of course, we'll just jump in if we have anything to add. So which poems or lines spoke to you on a personal level? So I have a bunch here, so I'll go at the end and I'll take any of the ones that you guys didn't call out. Okay, Katrina, you want to pass? Hayden, you're up.
I'm coming. I do have something to contribute to this one.
Okay, good.
Okay, so I had a couple. I'm sorry. Let me get my notes up. Flying by the seat of my pants here. Okay, page 30, verse 2. I exist as I am. I have the same version that Lisa Marie and everyone else does. I exist as I am. That is enough. If no other in the world be aware, I sit content. And if each and all be aware, I sit content. And that just kind of spoke to me, to be content with your life and not always have to live up to what society says you should do. That's how I interpret it. I guess that's how you're supposed to read poetry. I'm not actually sure. And then I had page 76. Not I nor anyone else can travel that road for you. You must travel it for yourself. And then page 79, I liked all of verse 48. It's too much to read. I'm scared I'll botch it up.
I loved that. That's actually, Hayden, we had the same little spot highlighted, and I absolutely loved that. And I just kind of wanted to chime in really quickly on that page 30. I read that probably like 20 times because that resonated with me just so deeply. I feel like, as in this social media age, like, we don't just sit content, we're like flipping through our phones and doing all these different things at once. And I just love that. Just, I exist as I am. Like, it doesn't matter like regardless of what's happening like in the world at large, which can be a bit of a bleak experience if you're keeping up with the news. It's like, I am here content, and that is enough. It doesn't matter if anyone knows I'm content. I am here content. Like, my little four walls is at peace. And I just thought that was just a beautiful sentiment. And yeah, if no other in the world be aware, I still sit content. And that's just, I want to like put that on my desktop and read it over when I just need to like take a few breaths, All right. Does anyone else have quotes or favorite little lines they want to share?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I also had the first one that Hayden said, and that Lisa Marie talked about. I had that one marked as one that I wanted to share tonight. I won't expound on that anymore because I feel like it was basically the same that we got out of it. And then this is also on page 30 of that copy of it. It's in, or whatever, 21. The pleasures of heaven are with me, and the pains of hell are with me. The first I graft and increase upon myself. The latter I translate into a new tongue. using both good and bad to fuel you, whether you are doing that like artistically or just in life. Page 54, I don't even know which number this is in. It's in the long one. I do not ask the wounded person how he feels. I myself become the wounded person. And just the idea of, I don't know, I very easily take on the emotions of people around me. So that kind of resonated with me. Okay, this was a little bit later in the same section that Hayden had one of her quotes. It says, "You are also asking me questions and I hear you. I answer that I cannot answer. You must find out for yourself." And that I have because it reminded me of I guess it was actually something that someone I worked with when they were in family counseling. The counselor told her, you have to let your kids make their own mistakes, even if they're the mistakes that you made yourself. And so just as a person, but also as a parent, that is like really wise to me, that like, I can't give you all the answers. You're going to have to find out for yourself. And I had a lot more marked, but those were the ones that stood out the most, and on like going back through, still kind of resonated with me.
There's a quote that says, "You don't read poetry, you feel it." And I just feel like some of these lines, that's so true. I also marked the very end of Song of Myself, and it's just the last two lines here, or the last two verses. It says, "You will hardly know who I am or what I mean, but I shall be good health to you nevertheless. Failing to fetch me at first, keep in courage. Missing me one place, search another. I stop somewhere waiting for you." I probably read that one like 5 times. I just thought that was so beautiful and romantic, but then also very evocative of the verses themselves. Like, I felt like I could read this 20 times and still not get it, but I feel like he's like speaking directly to the reader with that and saying, hey, if you don't get it the first time, stay encouraged. You're gonna get it eventually. Let's see. Anyone else before I keep rolling on quotes? Janie?
I'll go. So from the Song of Myself, part of Leaves of Grass, I really like the first line of part 16, which is, "I am of old and young, of the foolish as much as the wise." And I just like that because when we are old, I think there's always that part of us that remembers being young. And when we're young, even though we haven't been old yet, we kind of like envision it and have like some conceptualization of that. And I don't know, I feel like you carry everything with you in your memories, and you might not be able to access it all the time, but you know, it's there. And so you have those young aspects as well as those old aspects, and those wise, you know, you become wiser, but you still make foolish mistakes sometimes, even as you become older. And the other part that I can remember really liking, there was a lot of stuff I liked, but like I said, I wasn't writing in my book, and so I knew this was going to happen for some of it. I was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to remember, and I was like, I'll remember, but I can't find it. But on A Song of Occupations, which is not my favorite piece of Leaves of Grass overall, but I like number 4 of Songs of Occupations at the beginning. "The sum of all known value and respect I add up in you, whoever you are. The president is up there in the White House for you. It is not you who are here for him. The secretaries act in their bureaus for you, not you here for them. The Congress convenes every December for you. Laws, courts, the forming of states, the charters of cities, the going and coming of commerce and mails are all for you." And I just really like that. And I think maybe some of our politicians should read that and know that they're there for us, and we're not here for them, and that they're not going to be there for us if we don't put them in again. So I just feel like politicians almost should have that like posted like in their office somewhere, so they always remember that.
Tabitha, sorry, Jana, was that a wrap? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's it.
Tab joined us, and did we say online you made it through, Tabitha?
Hi guys. Oh, through the book?
Or you gave it? I know you read some of it.
I did. I read some of it, but what I did read, I did love. But I love poetry, so I think it's kind of hard when you just automatically know you're gonna love poetry or someone who use words to paint a picture. So I did enjoy what I did read. Unfortunately, I didn't get through all of it. But I just, I think I shared on one of the posts that I just love the way he's painting pictures, and some of those pictures remind me of when I was growing up and being in nature and just being with the clouds and being a kid walking outside in the grass. Like, I was just like, to me, if someone can take me there and take me back there, then it's a green light for me. It's a go. I just had a crazy month with my birthday and everything, so I didn't get into it as much as I wanted to, but I loved what I did read. I don't know where we are, where you said at quotes.
Yeah, we're just sharing some of our favorite parts. I know it's hard because we may have taken some of the greatest hits there.
No, like I don't have like a quote just right off the top. I haven't really had much time to prepare for tonight, unfortunately, but I do just have that memory in my mind where he's, talking about nature, and I don't know, it just makes me smile. It makes me want to go and like take my shoes off and walk through the grass. Like, of course the germaphobe in me is kind of like, no, but just like those things you used to do when you were a kid and you didn't worry about stuff like that. I don't know. I think it's like timely for spring and seeing like the flowers and seeing nature. I don't know. It just makes me want to go back to my roots of, being kind of a country girl and getting outside more.
Absolutely. You guys know I'm a seasonal junkie, so I pick all the books. I try to assign them to an appropriate season, and I definitely picked this one for spring very intentionally, and the fact that it was purple lended itself perfectly to April. Okay, so one thing Meredith shared in the comments that I completely agree is that the preface to Leaves of Grass is really good. He talks about a lot about America and how that that was his inspiration for his poetry, and we'll talk about that a little bit in the coming questions. But one quote that's actually pretty widely known and famous is on page 239, and it's just beautiful. And it says, "This is what you shall do. Love the earth and sun and the animals. Despise riches. Give alms to everyone that asks. Stand up for the stupid and crazy. Devote your income and labor to others. Hate tyrants. Argue not concerning God. Have patience and indulgence toward the people. Take off your hat to nothing known or unknown, or to any man or number of men. Go freely with powerful, uneducated persons, and with the young, and with the mothers of families. Read these leaves in the open air every season of every year of your life. Re-examine all you have been told at school or church or in any book. Dismiss whatever insults your own soul, and your very flesh shall be a great poem." I thought that was just beautiful.
Yeah.
Any other quotes, or should we keep it moving? All right. So this, Jana, I do not have an answer for, but I know it's important because this was a question you wrote. So number 3 is, Whitman explores the ideas of the individual and the collective, as well as areas where they intersect. Which idea stands out stronger for you? Do you mind taking it away with that one? And anyone else who has something to add can chime in. Jana?
Just sorry, like I don't know if I'm cutting out or everyone else is, since I'm on my cell phone instead of my computer, so it cut out. But I remember the question that I sent you. So throughout, there's all these themes, right, where he's like, you are me and I am you and we are all one, and he repeats it in very different ways in those lists that Erica had mentioned, and various other ways too, all throughout. And so he has this kind of idea playing throughout that the individual is a part of the whole, but the whole is there for the individual. It's kind of a little bit like the political section I read. I feel like I don't know which one he has more weight on. I think it would depend on which section I looked at. at any given point in time. Sometimes I feel like he's really concerned with the individual, and not the individual so much as himself. Sometimes I think he's stroking his own ego a little bit in the poem by that. And, you know, there's some lines where he equates himself to God, and obviously, like, he's not religious by nature. And so, you know, it's not exactly, I don't know. So, but he does want like this kind of transcendental idea of like we're all connected and together, and we can transcend our differences. And so it's really hard for me to separate the two.
Well, thanks for bringing that to our attention. Anyone else have anything to add on that question?
I was just going to say that I noticed that he spoke a lot about, or wrote a lot about, the idea of I think there was one in here that I reread today. I don't know where it was. I don't think it was in Song of Myself. I think it was further, but I could be mistaken. But he is basically standing, I think he's on a ferry, and he's talking about how like all these people years from now will be standing at this ferry, on this ferry, seeing the same things that I'm seeing, and like people before me have stood in the same spot and looked at these same things, and just, I don't know, the idea of us all being connected, that stood out to me just as something that I think we forget a lot, that we are all connected, even in ways that we don't think about. And it was just definitely noticed that theme running throughout, probably more so than, I guess, the idea of the collective. I noticed the idea of the individual more throughout. I don't know if that's just because that idea resonates more with me, as being connected to everybody versus like me, or if I just, I don't know, I do it all.
So I think this would be a good time to skip ahead to number 5, because this ties together. But the number 5 says, in Song of the Question 5, and those are all linked below in the discussion bar, or the down bar. So it says, in Song of Myself, Whitman writes, I believe a leaf of grass is no less than the journey work of the stars. And of course, that's the, you know, it's the title line there. And the question is, how does Whitman call attention to small objects? In Song of Myself, why do you think he called his life work Leaves of Grass? What does a leaf of grass mean to Walt Whitman and to you? So I think, you know, the whole concept there of Leaves of Grass is that they're a single entity that's all connected. So I think that at least is the heart behind that. Is it an analogy or a simile? I think it's a simile or a metaphor. One of those. Somebody can correct me.
It was brought to my attention that he believed people were more like leaves, and that they all weren't like rigid blades, and they were individual and unique like the people of America.
Oh, interesting. I love.
Yeah. Well,
Go ahead, Jana.
oh, I was just gonna say what Hayden said, and what Lisa Marie said too, because, you know, I don't know if you've ever had crabgrass, like where you don't want it, you try to pull it up and you just end up with all of the roots that kind of spread together and protect the grass from being destroyed from each other. So each blade of grass, the root system is protecting the rest of each other, the individuals separately. So it is kind of an extended metaphor in that sense. The whole poem is, or a poem series really, is an extended metaphor for that, that although we can be plucked out individually and we have our own like wounds or tears that like grass would, that our root system binds us together.
Interesting. Okay. Anyone else want to add anything to that one before I move on? Okay, so the next one is controversy. Controversy is often a way that writers remain relevant for generations. What was once controversial can often remain problematic for generations. Taking this into consideration, which elements of Whitman's writing and themes remain controversial today? Why do you think this is so? So this is Jana's question that she so graciously wrote for us. But, you know, one theme that has received a lot of controversial commentary is, you know, there's definitely homoerotic themes in the writing that, you know, this was written in 1855. So that was like the craziest thing back then that somebody had written this, and, you know, it was like a bestseller. But that's the only controversy that I'm aware of. Jana, you obviously have more insight than I do, so please take it away.
Well, I definitely think that's a major one that, and obviously till right now, you know, till present day. There's also, as someone mentioned earlier, you know, themes of racism, and that he says, I think it's in 24, it looks like, I will accept nothing which all cannot have their counterpart of on the same terms. And he's essentially saying, I won't accept anything unless everyone can have it. You know, he says, voices of sexism less, voices of veiled, and I remove the veil, voices indecent by me, clarified and transfigured. And he's kind of talking about how he wants everyone and everything to be acceptable. And, you know, and earlier in that, in 24, are the lines that are in Paper Towns, which in Paper Towns are taken very literal. And she, you know, and Q does the actual physical things, but it says, unscrews the locks from the doors, unscrews the doors themselves from their jambs. And, you know, this is like very symbolic of like Whitman's like coming out of the closet, or the idea of coming out of the closet quite literally, that you're taking things off its hinges. This passage in 24 is a lot about those ideas of acceptance, both racial and sexual.
Gotcha. Yeah, I love that throwback to when we read Paper Towns. That was like June of 2015, and it referenced Walt Whitman and that whole scene where Q takes the door off to get the note that Margot left in the jam. I completely forgot about that. Thank you for bringing that out, Jana. Okay, circling back to number 4, America is the inspiration for Whitman's work, and he is known for being the first poet of democracy and a poet of patriotism. What aspects of Whitman's poems seem uniquely American? So in the preface, I love that he said, the United States themselves are essentially the greatest poem. And then right under that, he says, here is the hospitality which forever indicates heroes. And I thought that was just beautiful, and oh, I feel like I want to put that on a sticker for the July collection, which we're working on right now. Jana, that one, you also wrote that question. Sorry, I keep just bouncing it back to you. I hope you don't mind enlightening us.
Well, I think because we were talking about all that idea of individualism and what stands out stronger, you know, America is known for being a place of individuals. And that although we're together and we're a country, we don't necessarily have like a collective, like everyone in our country believes this and we go forward. You know, we're not argument and debate, and we celebrate individuality and individual progress. And so much of what he says here is about that, about celebrating our differences, and that although he doesn't live and experience those things, that they are also great. And because you experience them, he experiences them. Or because, you know, he walks by the prostitute, right? If you have this book that a few of us have been reading out of, there is a poem called The Prostitute, and, you know, and he talks about that, and that everyone is somebody as they're an individual in the US. And that's very different from other countries, and that's part of what we're built upon, and it's part of why other countries don't always like us. And so I think that, and I think it's why a lot of Leaves of Grass, or even The Great Gatsby, which celebrates that same theme of individual uprise and fighting against everything, part of the collective Americanness, are not always understandable by people who aren't American, because it's not, or not as well liked and celebrated, because they're definitely very American ideals. And I read earlier about the president, and they're there for us and we're not there for them. I think those are all based in that kind of democratic idea.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I just loved all of the preface. I thought that was beautiful. I feel like I want to read that part again, because there was so much in there, so much like beautiful American imagery. But then it kind of went over my head a little bit too, like we were talking about, or a lot actually. Okay, so number 7, why do you think Ralph Waldo Emerson immediately proclaimed the book the most extraordinary piece of wit and wisdom that America had yet contributed? And why do you think Walt Whitman's work endures today, right? Like, why are we still talking about Walt Whitman? Why is he still referenced in like The Notebook and in paper towns and, taught in high school and all of that? Any takers?
Well, I think just kind of like Jana was saying, the idea that he does embrace this ideal of you are, but also be part of something, despite the differences. I think that that's like an enduring message that onto, and just, I don't know, the idea that that he was so inspired by America is probably one of the reasons that he's still today and talked about today, and the time when he was living during, some of the later stuff was during the Civil War, and our differences were tearing us apart, and I just that idea of I was back to one of the quotes that I didn't say because I don't know if I had it marked or not. It says, "Do I contradict myself? Very well, then I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes." Just the fact that, we contain multitudes of ideas in America and yet exist even in that tension. And I think we have to learn how to exist in that tension because it's not going away.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a good one. I had that one highlighted too. And that's one of the famous lines from this book is after he says, "Do I contradict myself? Very well, then I contradict myself. I am large and I contain multitudes." And he goes on to say, "I too am not a bit tamed. I too am untranslatable. I sound my barbaric yap over the roofs of the world." So that seems very evocative of what you just said, Erica. Okie doke, that is all of our questions. Thank you guys for bearing with this classic. I so appreciate you joining, whether you read or not, and I promise I will choose more accessible classics in the future. And this next month, we are reading a book that I pretty much guarantee you're going to love. I've forced it on pretty much everyone I know, and everyone I know then continues to force it on everyone they know, and it's a great tradition. And the book we're reading for May is The Gift from the Sea. And I just think that it's like, again, with the seasonal things, it's just like the perfect kind of book for May where we're kind of like slowing down. I know a few of you book chatters mentioned it. And I know for me, like this last month has just been so insanely busy. Like I have whiplash from this month, but I feel like May things start to slow down a little bit. And I'm just excited to read this. It's a short read. I mean, we should all be able to get through it. It's short in the the font is fairly large. So this is gonna be a good one. And there's also a lot to discuss in it. So I'm excited for this for May. So definitely go grab your gift from the sea if you haven't already. And then also our quarterly, well, it's actually not quite quarterly, it's 3 times a year. Our Glam Read stickers start over in May. So if you haven't grabbed your Glam Reads kit to track all of your reading and your reviews and all of that good stuff, go grab it. And let's see, I think that's it. Book chatters, did I forget anything? Or those of you who are on the live chat, anything to add, questions, anything? We're finishing early here. Going once, going twice.
I'll add one last thing. Sorry.
Yeah.
My sound keeps cutting in and out. So earlier when you read the question, I wasn't sure what it was, and it took me a minute to figure out what that last question was. And just like Thoreau and Emerson are also very much like the idea of, oh, you don't have to believe today. And I just really think that's part of why they liked Whitman. And I don't know, that they're all kind of in that same little ring, and I'm not a super fan of any of them. So, but it's probably because I'm more of like, you should believe what you believe and like have conviction.
The beginning of what you said cut out a little bit for me. Did it cut out for you guys, book chatters? Will you just repeat the beginning of what you said? Because I think it was really interesting, but it cut out.
That Emerson and Thoreau, part of why they endorsed Whitman was because, like him, they believed that you could change your mind, believe one thing one day and change it based on how you feel the next day, or sometimes something you learn, which I agree you can change some based on what you learn, but that you were kind of allowed to be contradictory in your beliefs from one day to the next because of like their transcendentalist right kind of rising above beliefs. And so they're kind of all in that same little camp of people. And I think that's why they really were drawn to his poetry.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I thought of one more thing while you were talking too, Jana. The famous, so I looked high and low and I didn't know if anyone else knew, but you know that famous quote from Whitman that says, keep your face always toward the sunshine and shadows will follow behind you. Where is the source of that? I'm 90% sure it wasn't in the book that we pretty much all read out of, but I had a journal that a friend gave me that I filled completely up, and I just always have loved that quote, and I wanted to find the source. I was wondering if anyone knew.
I just asked my bestie. She would know because she has it hanging up in her office, so I'm waiting for her to tell me.
All right, I might have to add that to the down bar unless anyone in the live chat knows. But it's a bit of a delay, so I guess we will have to continue this discussion either on Goodreads or on Facebook or in the comment section below. So if you enjoy reading along with us every month, please give this video a thumbs up. That helps other readers connect with us. And yeah, leave a comment below with your thoughts on Walt Whitman. I would love to read through it, or on Goodreads. I already have the discussion going for Gift from the Sea, so that is up and rolling on Goodreads, and I can't wait to spend another month reading along with you guys. Thank you, book chatters, for donating your time to our little book club, and thank you all of you that make time to watch us live or come chat and watch the replay. So we'll see you next month, the last Thursday in May. Have a fantastic month.